Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, cut through the noise, and we'll get straight to the knowledge you can use.
And today, we're tackling something pretty intense based on the material sent in,
Yeah, a deep dive into systemic parasite eradication. Sounds lovely.
doesn't it? But, the sources are actually making a very strong, pragmatic case here.
Okay, what's the core argument?
They basically claim that dealing with these microscopic, unwanted guests, as they call them, is maybe one of the cheapest and most immediately impactful things you can do for your overall health, like a fundamental optimization.
Okay, that is a hook. So we're going deep on why this biological cleanup matters.
Exactly. We'll unpack why they're so damaging, how they actually get into our systems. Some ways are quite surprising, actually.
Right, and then identify the symptoms and walk through this specific four-step method the sources lay out for getting rid of them cyclically.
We really have to start with the stakes involved, because this isn't just about, feeling a bit off.
It's more serious.
Much more. The sources stress that these organisms, they've been adapting for hundreds of millions of years. They pose a profound threat to how our bodies function systemically.
Okay, so if they're that adapted, what's their main weapon against us, biologically speaking?
Immune suppression. That's the big one highlighted in the sources.
So they actively weaken our defenses.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
If you've got an active parasitic infection, it's working to suppress your immune system. And that's critical, right? Because whether you're fighting off a simple cold or something much more serious, you need that immune response.
And if it's compromised...
then you're fundamentally vulnerable. Simple as that.
But it goes beyond just vulnerability, doesn't it? I saw connections in the documents to deeper metabolic problems. How does that work?
Well, it often starts with just resource depletion. They cause malnutrition.
Okay.
And chronic malnutrition, that often leads to anemia. But here's the real kicker at the cellular level. This kind of ongoing malnutrition, it eventually depresses what the sources call mitochondrial respiratory function.
Okay, break that down. Depressing mitochondrial respiratory function. What does that actually mean for the average person's body?
Think of mitochondria like the tiny engines inside every single one of your cells. If their respiratory function is depressed, the cell is essentially starving for energy. It can't produce energy efficiently.
Right.
Now, the sources are very clear. Parasites don't generally directly cause cancer, but they argue that this chronic energy deficit contributes indirectly to tumorigenesis, the start of cancer, because the body just can't properly manage things like cellular repair or programmed cell death when it's energy deprived.
Wow. So they're not just stealing resources, they're actually causing, like, systemic engine problems.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And the sources call them deeply intelligent for a reason. That intelligence lets them hide, lets them lodge themselves systemically, not just in the gut, but in places you really wouldn't expect.
Where else are we talking?
Oh, all over. They can lodge in the central nervous system, so the brain. That can lead to conditions like cysticercosis.
In the brain.
Yes. Also, the eyes, the liver, think fasciola hepatica, even the lymphatic system, the blood, muscles, joints, skin, they can really get around. So if you're serious about health optimization, you have to consider the systemic lodging potential.
Which brings us right to the next crucial point. How do they get in? If these intelligent guests are potentially everywhere, what are the vias de entrada, as the sources put it, the windows of infection?
Well, food is the obvious one, especially raw or poorly washed food eaten outside your own home where you lose control over hygiene,
Yeah.
Things like lettuce, tomatoes.
Things you might get in a salad at a restaurant.
Exactly. And then there are dishes known for raw stuff. Sushi, sashimi, carpaccio, kippe crudo, those kinds of things.
But there are exceptions, right? The sources mention fermentation.
Correct. Fermentation is kind of like nature's defense mechanism here. Microorganisms, including parasite eggs, generally can't survive that process. So properly made sauerkraut, call acida, they sometimes call it, or properly pickled vegetables, those are generally okay.
Okay, good to know. Now, we absolutely have to talk about the juicing trap. The source material really flags this trend of juicing or making smoothies as a potential risk.
Yeah, this is a big paradox, isn't it, for people trying to be healthy? Even if you're using organic produce, when you liquefy roots and tubers, think carrots, beets, ginger, believer, you inevitably keep some soil particles and potentially parasite eggs in that liquid. But it gets worse if it's not organic. The sources calculate you could be concentrating chemicals like glyphosate, DDT, other pesticides, maybe up to 600% higher dose in that single glass.
600%, that's staggering.
Right.
A supposedly healthy drink becomes a chemical cocktail.
Pretty much. High risk.
Okay, so moving beyond the kitchen, what about the wider environment?
Water is the classic historical source, obviously. Think cholera epidemics.
Oh, right.
But even today in developed countries, the sources weren't about public fountains, some swimming pools, parks, even gym water dispensers as potential infection points.
And playgrounds,
Yeah.
sandboxes.
Yes. Areneros, the sources call them. Sandboxes. They can be saturated with bird droppings, other animal waste. They become breeding grounds for certain parasite types.
Okay. And then there's the issue closer to home.
Yeah.
Pets. We love them. But that close contact is a risk factor.
Yeah.
The sources talk about a family culture of prevention.
Absolutely essential, because if one person or the pet gets infected, it's just too easy for it to cycle through the whole household, continuous reinfection. You have to break that cycle together.
Makes sense. What about the surprising avenues? You mentioned birds earlier.
Yeah, this one's a bit startling. Common birds, sparrows, pigeons, thrushes, they can carry parasite eggs. And when they flutter their wings near, say, an outdoor cafe table, they aerosolize dried feces and eggs. It becomes fine dust in the air.
So that lovely outdoor brunch.
It could come with invisible extras, yeah. That dust contaminates food, drinks, surfaces. And finally, think about food service itself. Busy servers handling dirty plates, them clean ones. It creates this probabilistic contamination, hard to avoid completely through hygiene alone, which is why cyclical action is key.
Right. Constant vigilance. Which leads us perfectly into part 3, identifying the enemy. If contamination is this common, we need the signs. Let's do that self-check from the sources. What are the gut clues?
Okay, so you're looking for persistent stuff. Gas, bloating, constipation, maybe alternating with diarrhea, nausea, vomiting sometimes, and just that systematic abdominal pain or cramping, like a constant nagging gut upset revoltura, they call it.
And checking stool.
Yeah, unpleasant but important. Look for abnormalities. Is it consistently loose? Greasy? Do you see anything weird like mucus or maybe little white threads or segments hebras, which could indicate bits of tapeworms, like taphenia?
Okay. Moving beyond the gut, what about systemic red flags, things that might get mistaken for something else?
Big ones are unexplained appetite changes. Could be constant hunger, especially intense sweet cravings.
Ah, the sugar connection.
Exactly. Or conversely, a sudden loss of appetite. Also, general fatigue, feeling exhausted all the time, mood swings, even depression. And unexplained muscle and joint pain is another one.
But lots of things cause those symptoms, right?
That's the crucial caveat the sources make. Huge overlap with other conditions. Leads to a lot of potential confusion, maybe false leads.
Got it. What about signs on the skin or during sleep?
Skin issues are common. Unexplained rashes, hives, that's urticaria eczema, rosacea flare-ups. And sleep quality often takes a major hit. Insomnia, really intense nightmares, night sweats, grinding your teeth, bruxism.
And that nighttime itching.
That's a classic, almost giveaway sign, especially in kids. Usually anal or vaginal itching, worst at night. And in more severe cases, you might see progressive weight loss, clear malnutrition, or a persistent fever, sometimes one that fluctuates, like a tidal fever.
So if someone goes to their doctor suspects this, what's the strongest clinical sign non-invasively?
It's eosinophilia. Finding elevated eosinophils in a white blood cell count.
Explain eosinophils quickly.
They're a specific type of white blood cell basically designed to attack larger invaders, like parasites. So if your eosinophil count is persistently high, it's a really strong indicator you might be dealing with a parasitic infection.
Okay, that's a clear marker. So we've established the threat is continuous. Let's talk solutions part 4, cyclical treatment. The sources use this cool biological concept, the Red Queen hypothesis.
Oh, I love this analogy. It's from Alice in Wonderland, right? The Red Queen says you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place.
How does that apply here?
It's the perfect metaphor for fighting parasites. They adapt so quickly. If you stop taking preventative action, they just gain ground immediately. The sources are really blunt about this. Cyclical deparasitizing isn't about getting ahead. It's about constantly running just to maintain the level of health you already have.
So constant effort is needed just to break even, basically.
Precisely. And the sources boil this down to 3 core prevention rules.
The 3-2-1 rule.
Yep. Rule 3, avoid raw foods, especially if your immunity might be low for any reason.
Okay.
Rule 2, create that family culture of prevention. Treat everyone, including pets, at the same time to break the cycle. Non-negotiable.
Makes sense.
And rule 1, the foundation. Deparasitize cyclically, at least twice a year. Because, given all those contamination pathways we talked about, the sources basically assume reinfection within about 6 months is almost inevitable.
Wow, okay. So if cyclical treatment is the mandate, we need the how. Let's dive into part 5. The comprehensive four-step eradication method from the sources. This is the practical playbook.
Right. It starts with a really powerful prep step. Step 1, the vitamin C flush, descarga de vitamina C.
A vitamin C flush. How does taking vitamin C flush out parasites, especially systemic ones?
Okay, so the immediate goal is mechanical, actually. It's about creating hyperosmolar diarrhea. It sounds dramatic, but it's non-toxic.
Hyperosmolar.
Meaning you take a large dose of vitamin C, which creates a really high concentration of solute, the vitamin C itself, inside your intestine. Your body naturally tries to balance this out through osmosis, so it pulls water from your blood and tissues into the intestine.
Ah, so it liquefies everything and forces a flush.
Exactly, a physical clearing out. But there's an anti-parasitic mechanism too.
Okay.
Vitamin C is structurally very similar to glucose, and parasites love glucose. It's their main fuel. So when you flood the gut with vitamin C, it kind of acts like a decoy. It competitively inhibits the pathogens, confuses them, weakens the ones hanging out in the gut lining.
Interesting. So how do you actually do the flush?
The method is, on an empty stomach, ideally after a 12-hour fast, take 10 to 20 grams of pure powdered pharmacopoeia-grade vitamin C. That's ascorbic acid or sodium ascorbate, not calcium ascorbate. The sources stress that.
Okay, pure vitamin C powder.
Dissolve it in about 250, 300 cc's of water, so a decent glassful. Drink 1 glass every 20 minutes until that hyperosmolar diarrhea kicks in. Most people react by the 3rd glass, apparently.
Got it. So after the flush, what's step 2?
Step 2, pharmacological deparasitization. This is crucial for tackling those systemic infections we mentioned, the ones in the liver, blood, brain, etc.
And this needs a doctor.
Absolutely. This step requires systemic medication prescribed by a physician based on a proper diagnosis, stool tests, blood work, symptoms, the whole picture.
Right.
The good news, according to the sources, is that many of these anti-parasitic drugs have a high therapeutic index.
Okay, high therapeutic index. We hear that term. Simple terms.
It basically means the drug is much more effective at killing the parasite than it is toxic to us, the host. There's a wide safety margin between the effective dose and a harmful dose.
So powerful but relatively safe when used correctly.
Exactly. The sources mention an index often around 6 or 7. Still, physician oversight is mandatory for this step.
Okay. Step 1, flush. Step 2, pharma. What's next? Step 3, deep fasting. Ayuno profundo.
Yes. The sources are very specific about this. The goal here is to create what they call an energetic fence, basically, a metabolic starvation zone after the drugs have done their work, to starve out any stragglers.
How deep is deep?
It has to be an absolute fast, water only, for a minimum of 72 hours.
72 hours?
Yeah.
Wow. Why so long? Why not just say 48 hours?
The source material is really adamant about this. They argue 72 hours is the physiological minimum needed to trigger the profound internal metabolic shift required for this systemic reset. It takes that long, apparently, to really change the body's internal environment and energy sourcing in a way that gives any remaining parasites absolutely no resources, no foothold.
It's about that deep internal transformation.
Exactly. It's a serious commitment, but the rationale is clear in the sources.
Okay, huge commitment.
Ah.
Then finally, step 4. Regenerate the microbiota.
Yes, critical final step. After the flush and the drugs, your gut flora is obviously going to be altered. It needs immediate regeneration. And the key here is using unpasteurized foods.
Unpasteurized specifically.
Yes, containing live, active microorganisms known to be effective. Things like raw, natural yogurt, real unpasteurized sauerkraut, maybe even things like unpasteurized shirasu boshi, which are dried little sardines popular in some cultures.
And the warning here is about
avoid powdered probiotic capsules and any food-labeled probiotic that's actually been pasteurized.
why? People take probiotic capsules all the time.
The sources argue pretty forcefully that pasteurization kills the microorganisms. They're essentially dead, so taking them in a capsule or a pasteurized product won't effectively repopulate your gut. They use a striking analogy. You can't repopulate a cleared-out town by sending in the new residents already in coffins. You need live, thriving organisms to restore that internal ecosystem.
Okay, it's a memorable image.
Okay.
So, recapping for you, the listener, cyclical treatment is vital. The family culture of prevention is key. And this 4-step method, flush, pharma, fast, regenerate, offers a really structured way to tackle these surprisingly common systemic issues.
And before we wrap up, there's one last clarification the sources make, trying to dispel some common medical confusion. The question, is cancer just an accumulation of parasite eggs?
Right, I saw that mentioned. And the answer?
A definitive no, according to these sources.
So where does that idea even come from?
It seems to stem from confusion under the microscope, basically. Tumor tissue can sometimes look histologically similar to chronic lesions undergoing what the sources call a failed repair effort.
Oh,
Specifically, during the granular phase of wound healing, certain tissue structures can, apparently, mimic tumor formation. An inexperienced observer might confuse, say, an intestinal blockage caused by a dense mass of parasite eggs with an actual tumor, but biologically they're distinct pathologies.
got it. So a case of mistaken identity at the microscopic level.
Seems to be the explanation offered.
Okay, well, the big theme running through this whole deep dive seems to be that dealing with parasites isn't just about illness. It's about securing a better, longer, more functional life. We talked about that Red Queen hypothesis running just to stay in place health-wise.
Yeah.
So now that you understand this need for continuous cyclical effort just to manage your internal environment,
Yeah.
maybe a final thought to consider.
Yeah.
What other areas of your life, maybe finances, relationships, skills, are you currently just stationary in? Where might you need to start actively running, taking structured cyclical action just to prevent slipping backwards, just to maintain your current position? It seems that continuous effort is needed just to keep up, not just inside our bodies, but maybe outside too.